For 20 years, I have struggled to make sense of my experience of Theatre Zingaro's Triptyk, Dance of the Centaurs. Unlike the many kinds of performances I have experienced, this performance continues to baffle and mystify me. While I should feel guilty about bringing my husband David to the show, I do not. Instead, I feel comfort knowing that my experience of this performance is shared with him because he is my best friend and collaborator. I have not seen a show before or since fail like this one. David tells me, I don't regret going. It is the singular artistic performance of my life. It was the funniest thing I've ever seen. I doubt Barnabas, the founder of the French Theatre Zingaro equestrian troupe, or the performers in the show would see it that way. I also doubt the Philharmonic Society of Orange County, California, the producer of the show and spent $2.2 million on it, would either. My name is Emily Corcoran. I am a graduate student at East Tennessee State University in the Master of Arts, Communication Studies and Storytelling program. My piece that I'm talking about today, What Is This? A Horse Ballet or a Fiasco, is an autoethnography to examine why I can't make sense of this show. Storytelling is the heart of artistic performance. What happens when there is no story? How does the audience react, and what are the audience's expectations? In the case of Theatre Zingaro's avant-garde Triptyk, these considerations were ignored, and a substantial financial loss was incurred by the show's producer, the Philharmonic Society of Orange County, California. After the show's 4-week run ended, the rest of the 2002 Eclectic Orange season was canceled, and arts performances were curtailed over the next decade. How did this happen? Using cooperation, narrative inquiry, and humor, and also the lens of fiasco, I examine Triptyk. From the time I was little, I've loved horses. My mom tells me my first word was horse. When I turned 4, I got it in my head that I had to have a horse, and so I asked my dad daily for one for 2 years. When I was 6, he brought home 2 Shetland ponies. I quickly learned that wanting a horse and caring for one are 2 different things. I was involved in all aspects of their care. A horse is a magical creature, intelligent, filled with beauty, and full of surprises. I eventually grew up. My horses passed away. I went to college, got married, moved to California, started working a job early in my career. And one night, my husband's reading the newspaper, the Orange County Register, and he sees this article about Theatre Zingaro and this new show that was coming, Triptyk. He brings it to me and he says, honey, this is an article I think you'll be interested in. And I'm reading down through the article and I see this statement. Certainly dealing with the Department of Agriculture is not something the Philharmonic Society normally does. Yeah, I bet. And then as the months passed, leading up to opening night, there was more articles that kept appearing. And finally, they started selling tickets at $45 to $75 each. That was a bit too expensive. I was still early in my career and we were living off of my husband's salary. I sighed, really wanted to see the show. And then the show opened. About a week later, I saw an ad how tickets had been slashed 25%. I was so excited, I said, can we go? It was like I was asking my dad for a horse again. My husband said, sure. Now, at the time, my husband and I did not read reviews. That changed after we saw this show. We get to the grounds where the big top was, We entered through the flap, and the first thing we were told is no one can enter the arena until showtime at 8:30. Okay. We'll hang out here in this outer ring, which was just the glorified covered parking lot. I could smell popcorn, spilled wine, and the faint scent of horse manure. They announced if you got concessions that you had to consume them before going into the arena, which I found equally odd because we weren't in a theater. Finally, 8:30, we enter, we go up our bleacher seats to the top, and the ring was inside. Incense is flowing. And when they start, the first note of Stravinsky's Rite of Spring starts. And I'd forgotten how dissonant that was, and I started to cringe every time we hit a note. I didn't see horses. I thought, okay, what are they doing? There was 8 men from India come out into the ring, and they're doing some martial arts. They're stretching and sparring and kicking, and I'm thinking, where's the horses? Finally, some riders on horses come out, and it looked like they were jumping up and over the horses and riding the horses, doing acrobatic tricks, and sometimes sparring with the horses, and all this dissonant music going on. Well, my husband leans over in the middle of this and he said, I want to leave. I just stared at him. We paid good money for these tickets. We aren't leaving. I need to use the restroom. So he makes the whole row get up. He goes out and then comes back later. He tells me later that he went on into the outer arena area to see if there was anything else to do. And there wasn't. And because I had the car keys, he came back in. Well, the first act ends. We go to an intermission. We come back in. And the second act has a clarinetist on this mound of dirt. And he's playing an equally dissonant piece of music. I kind of felt for the notes. It sounded like they were coming out of this clarinet being thrown against the wall. And they were yelping in pain, all the while giving me a headache. There were 2 dancers that came out into the show, into the ring. They were barefoot. They were doing ballet moves. And from the rafters comes down these 2 half-horse sculptures. It looked like it was a horse guillotined in the center. The first was the head with one leg raised with its foot like this, and the other was the tail and the rear and the back 2 legs. They set these 2 sculptures down into the dirt. And that's when it got really, really, really weird. The 2 dancers go up. One lays flat in the dirt facing the horse sculpture like it was a deity. The other dancer kisses the horse hoof, which put me on alert because you don't kiss a horse's hoof. You don't know where it's been. And then they start massaging the sculptures and rubbing their body against it. And then it led to rocking. And I am just looking and shaking my head and thinking, this wasn't in the promotion material. There's children here. Why are they doing this with children? And it's about this time my husband starts to giggle. And I stare at him. And he tries to contain his laughter. He giggles some more and it erupts out of his whole being. He can't control it. Waves of laughter and tears down his cheeks. People around us said, shh. And then the laughter spread. First a couple. And half our section was laughing. And then it spread to the side section. And the performers were baffled and befuddled by this. The act ends. We get to another intermission. The third act was just riders on horses and then a single person descends down from the rafters, looking like a baby wrapped like from a stork's neck. It was just a single ribbon covering this person. Didn't understand it. And the show ends and a goose comes out and there's no applause because from the very beginning they had told us not to. On the way home, my husband asked me what I thought of the show, and I said, well, that's the first performance where I saw them fucking horse sculptures. We get home and we read the review, and the reviewer was really apologetic. But apparently when she went to opening night, was pelted with dirt because a performer had fallen off the horse. Not once, but twice. And the audience was half applauding, half not applauding, and this was punishment. We look back at this show, my husband and I, and we remember This American Life, hosted by Ira Glass, Fiasco. And this was a fiasco in every shape and nuance of the whole thing. It was put on by a producer that didn't know anything about horse ballet to an audience that was not used to avant-garde performances. And most importantly, the founder himself, Barnabas, was quoted as saying, he arouses emotions. He doesn't tell a story. And that was the whole problem with the show. There was no story from beginning to end. The reason I haven't been able to make sense of this show is there was no sense to be found. I thank you for listening to my video.